Good morning. We're back doing another Zoom meeting. Hope everyone is doing well out there today. We wanted to take some time this morning and talk a little bit about what does reopening schools look like? I know there's been a lot of anxiety and a lot of questions asked around what's it going to look like and what's the plan for our district to open up. We like to remind folks that if you had to predict where we are today 3 months ago, there would have been no possible way that you could have made that prediction. And knowing that we're about 2 months out from school starting right now, it's going to be very difficult to predict what school starting looks like to every possible scenario. So GA with USA and KSSA, I'm Brian Jordan, Deputy Director of KASB. We wanted to take a little bit of time and kind of craft some key things for you to keep in mind. This is just really meant to be more of a get you thinking type of video. And then coming up on Thursday this week, June 18th at 1:15, and then again at 5:30, we're going to offer a leadership forum where you get on and actually chat, and we'll have some more details to share around things to consider as schools open up. So, G, what are some of the key things that leaders need to be thinking about from a messaging standpoint?
You know, I think the difference is when we did this in March, we had guidance from the states. We knew exactly where we were going. We had about a week to do it, and so we had to make very quick, agile plans. And we were given a lot of forgiveness from our patrons because they knew we were moving through this and we were able to pivot throughout the process. I think the difference is now is that we've got a lot more people that want to be involved in the conversation and more people that need to be involved in the conversation. We need to have the boards up front in the conversation. Teachers need to be involved. Parents need to be involved. The community and even the students. We have many of our districts that are talking to the kids through surveys and different informations. So I think the hold on who we want to be involved in those critical conversations need to be there, but we can't wait till the last minute to make these decisions. And I think that's the advantage that we have. But at the same time, like you said earlier, who knows what it's going to look like when August rolls around. So being able to plan appropriately and have those ideas of where we want to get to and why we want to get there, but be able to bring those critical components together in those key conversations together.
Yeah. So some things that we know are on the horizon. July 10th, the State Department of Education is going to release some guidance for reopening schools or for local boards and districts to consider as they reopen schools. So we believe, our associations believe, that this is a great time for boards to really start that discussion and that planning process. And I know people have been out there asking, where's USA, where's KSB with reopening conversations? We didn't want to get too far out in front of KSDE with some of the work that they're doing. They've assembled a great team of people from across the state. And so we think now is one of the points in time where you're starting that planning process. We like to use the reference of Dwight D. Eisenhower talking about preparing for their invasion of Normandy, that the plan is worthless, but the process of planning is critical. And we're not trying to make a comparison, obviously, to reopening schools or but the process of planning, as GA just mentioned, is so important, getting the right people around the table to talk about what's valued, talk about what's important as plans get rolled out, as policies get adopted for the reopening of school.
And I think it's important that we understand that KSD is only providing guidance. And so the conversations that you're having now can lead right into that guidance. But if we're not having conversations now, then you're making decisions on July 10th about what's important to us and who needs to be involved in the process and who needs to be involved in the planning. That can be done right now. It's perfect time for that, and then roll the two pieces together.
I think we've been also talking with folks about looking at this as an opportunity to maybe rethink what you're doing in some of your schools. You mentioned before we jumped on here the concept of school redesign was out there in Kansas. Well, this is redesign on a much more accelerated pace and a little more urgency probably with what we're doing. So to use this as an opportunity to rethink what you're doing in schools. What did we learn in the last months of school this year with the continuous learning efforts that we could roll forward? That'd be an example of using that as an opportunity. And then finally, patience and flexibility. As we know, 3 months ago looked a whole lot different than what we were normally doing at that time of the year. And so we had to have a lot of flexibility, and we're going to have flexibility as we open schools back up.
And we're in the middle of June right now. And again, with that, the reason the flexibility is so important is we're wide open right now, but we're also seeing in the news that where the rises of the positive testing is out there, but we're seeing different things going on. So we have to plan appropriately for all possibilities, but we don't have to plan for every single scenario.
Yeah. I think that's an important piece of the process also, is building those relationships with the people that you know are going to have some influence over decisions that have to be made. We know that in the spring the schools were shut down and then shifted or pivoted to continuous learning by some actions at the highest level in our state. We know going forward that that's not going to be the case come fall. So your local boards of education, superintendent, your local decision makers, such as your county health department, you need to establish those relationships now versus trying to scramble and do those in August and September. So make sure that you're getting those critical decision makers involved in your planning process is one thing we're advising folks to do as we go forward. We've also been, prompting superintendents to try to keep their boards up to date, in the loop. What are some things that they should be informing their boards about at this time?
Well, they need to be, number one, they need to be getting input from the board, because our board members are our connection to our community. So getting the input from the board is really important. And in March, maybe we didn't have that possibility. We reached out to our teachers and we put together a plan very quickly. But now we need to bring more people into that conversation. Board members are really important. Other things that need to be letting the board know is who's involved in the decision-making process, who's going to make those final decisions from the team, and who are those key players. How many, when we talk about KSDE, we're talking about 8 or 9 different committees. How many committees do you have at your local level, and how does everything that we're doing fit into the district's mission and vision that we've put together? And those are those key components that I think we need to keep the board in the middle of, but yet don't exclude them from the process, thinking they don't need to know like we did in March. They're just going to rubber stamp it. I think boards want to be more involved now, because they're the ones that are walking out there and dealing with this in the community much more often. And we talk about board members have to be reelected every 4 years. So they need to be able to answer those questions. So keeping them as informed as possible and getting their opinions and what they're hearing from the community is really critical.
I've had some recent conversations with boards around this very topic and how to structure this conversation, because it can get very contentious when you start talking about traditions and things we've always done in school and how those might look different. So it's important to have a conversation at this point when the stress of opening school isn't right there.
Right.
And so thinking about what we value, how do we adopt a policy that supports that? And honestly, the guidance that's coming out from KSDE will not be a one-size-fits-all type of guidance. You're going to have to decide locally what it is that we want to hold on to as we reopen schools. How does this guidance that we get from KSD help to shape that?
And I love what you said there, the values of the community, because again, there is pressure of what's going on next door to the district next door or the county next door or to our biggest rival. There is that pressure, but the values of that community may be completely different from our academic or athletic rival. And so we have to continue to focus on those in the individual values.
So we're encouraging you as leadership teams, boards and superintendents, to come together and start this conversation and make sure people understand that this isn't about making a decision today. It's about talking about what it could potentially look like. How do we unpack? How do we start to figure out what our values are? How do we make sure we've included the key decision makers and the right stakeholders around the table? So we're going to hopefully help you with some of those conversations and how to structure that coming up later this week. On Thursday, June 18th, we have a leadership forum where all board members and superintendents are welcome. Go to the KSB website, log in through our training portal there and get registered for that. It's free. But we hope to give you a framework that allows you to have that conversation back home around the board table and also give you an opportunity to connect with some other board members and leaders from around the state in those sessions to ask some questions of how they're approaching this planning conversation in their districts.
And I might add one more thing, Brian. We have these superintendent groups that are having conversations throughout the state. You've got a group, I've got a group, but there's some really good conversations that are going on in those meetings. But there's some pieces in there that you could share with board members as well. These are what other superintendents are saying, what they're talking about in other districts, and I think that can be powerful as well for board members.
Absolutely. So we hope to see you on Thursday, June 18th, 1:15 to 5. 1:15 is the first session. The next session will be at 5:30. There is a limit of 500 per each of those. So you need to get logged in and get registered. Those links are live on our website. So we hope to see you on Thursday. Take care.
Take care.